I got a few friends that are obsessed with it, actually.
I think it's one of those games that like I think I said this in my video. Also, speaking of videos, hello everybody. This we're live. Um, if that game was not exclusive to Japan and PC, no one would care if that game came out in English. Like it'd be like how people like you either played Ease 1 and 2 on the TurboGrafx 16 or you didn't. Like it's not like it's one of those things of like it exists, but because it didn't come out here, it's like a bigger deal.
Right.
We're going to start the show off with a very dumb tangent. I don't know if this is too old for you, Tony. Do you know or remember Final Fantasy Extreme?
Final Fantasy Extreme, that rings a bell for some reason. Is that the one on the Super Nintendo that was like baby mode?
Yes and no. Final Fantasy Extreme was going to be a years late port of Final Fantasy V exclusively on PC. But because they had released it out of order, like 6 would have already been out at this point, they were like, well, what do we call it? Because we called 6 3, and we're about to do 7. And we're going to release 5 on PC. They're like, all right, we'll call it Extreme. And it is basically done, and then they just scrapped it and they never released it.
Wow, that's a shame. Final Fantasy V is awesome.
Mm-hmm. Well, now that we know you have great taste in Final Fantasy games, let's get started. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Shin Megami Tensei Network. Link 251. Wow, this sure is late, but boy, I'm glad someone's listening to this. Hi, everyone in the live chat. I'm your host, Spencer Presley, and joining me for this very slapdash, rush together live show is my awesome co-host of the night, Tony, otherwise known as Tony4You. Now, I just realized this. Tony, is the 4U short for YouTube?
No, it is for you,
Oh, so it is
the
for me.
viewer.
Specifically
It is
me.
for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I just realized of like I would have loved it if it was that meta that it was like I'm only Tony for YouTube.
I like to keep my options open.
So yeah, if people do not know who you are, Tony, or why you're giving them YouTube videos, do you want to tell all the lovely listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Tony for you, as you all know. I make YouTube videos about theology masquerading as an SMT channel. I like to talk about the lore behind specific demons, the lore of the games. You might know me from the Why You Can't Say YHVH or the Angelic Order videos. Um, I hope to get to almost every important demon in the whole series. So here's for a lot more videos to come.
So I have a question about your videos. You asked me this earlier, but I never actually answered you. So I have seen your videos because actually one of my favorite things was when SMTN got started. Mostly like as a just like I mean it still is. It's mostly a community, even though like the podcast is still like a thing I do. Like I mean when I say SMTN, I don't think of the podcast first. I think of like the community that like is on it. One of the things that happened first was in our Facebook group, people would love to make long posts about demons of just be like, guys, I want to just write a like paragraph and a half about like the history of where this demon came from, where it came from, and like people loved that stuff. So it was just really really funny of like kind of how like how that eventually kind of worked its way to like it was eventually like people would kind of spin off into doing like Facebook pages or Twitter accounts. Twitter probably doesn't work as well for stuff like that, but YouTube videos was like such a perfect kind of fit for that that like then seeing your videos kind of like popping up, I always think it's really interesting of I love the idea of like kind of elaborating more on like these origins and like where it comes from and things like that. But in my brain, I feel like it's something that shouldn't be popular. You know, like I feel like if I told
Hmm.
someone on the street, "Hey, do you want to learn about Yahweh?" They'd be like, "Sir, please walk away from me."
Yeah, no, I felt that way too completely. When I first started, I didn't start my channel doing stuff like this. Um, I started with a recommendation on how to get into the SMT series. Then I started giving my thoughts on the narratives of it. Then I reviewed a game, and then I slowly just kind of found my stride and wanted to talk about these demons. And I had no inclination to think that I was going to be popular. I was just doing it kind of out of passion because I knew these demons deserved more than just the encyclopedia entry on whichever given game they were shown in. And then, in fact, I started making, 10 to 20 minute videos talking about one demon. And I realized this is fun. I'm just gonna do this. And then the numbers started coming in, and man, I was very surprised. So
I
thank
need
you
like
all.
a really douchey host one of these days to come in as a guest, be like, I knew it was gonna be clicking the numbers, dude. I got this Let's Play series and it was just raking in the view. Like I feel like that's like part of like not being a douchebag online is you have to constantly be surprised. Like if I ever did a video and if it broke 10,000 and I didn't freak out, I'd be like, I'm too cynical right now. Like even if I have like videos that like come out, like my this is my metric for success. If I actually put work into something, like I sat down, I wrote a script, and I did something, and if less than 1,000 people saw it, I would be sad. But like that very rarely happens. But what's funny is like if you look at most of the views I get on my channel, that's a very low average to hit. But I just like it's just because like I'm constantly thinking you've really had to have stepped out of your way if you've made your way over to Spencer Presley on YouTube. Like no algorithm help is getting anything done with that. So it's one of those funny things of like I don't want to be a brand. I don't want to do like a kind of like channel thing for it. I don't want to like stick to one thing for it. So I just always like set my metric for personal success at that like 1,000. Like every time it's over 1,000, I'm like, thank God. Which makes it even funnier than when I do have the very very rare video that does break 100. That I'm then like that's hilarious. Like the fact that the most viewed video on my channel is actually ironically it went like this for almost like 10 years. The most viewed video on my channel was me recording my TV during breakfast watching Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal. Just a random clip that got banned in like 6,000 countries. Um, then it was me not leaking, me being the first person to post the Strikers trailer after Atlus leaked it themselves. And so, because I immediately ripped it and then uploaded it, because I was like, I know they're gonna like take it off like immediately. So if you look, ironically, like I have the first Strikers trailer on YouTube because Atlus nuked theirs. So that one has like 90. It's been hovering at like 99,000 for like a year now. And the only other one that then broke it was me doing a dumb Curb Your Enthusiasm meme for those terrible Persona mystery keychain things. So it's like
Well,
no,
whatever works, works.
there's no rhyme or reason for any of this.
Yeah, I'm lucky I found something that a consistent kind of video style that works. I'm so happy about that because when I was bouncing from topic to topic, it was rough, but
So have
now
you gotten
it's worked
rid
out.
of like any of your past stuff, or was your Where to Start with SMT your first one?
That was my first ever thing I've made that was released publicly. No, I've never made any other videos before.
Got some hidden alphas that haven't seen the light of day. S-
Yeah,
s-
I don't know. I just this was my first. I never thought about making content. I never really had the inclination to. I was always wanted to be creative in some way, and I was never a talented, artist, but I could write. So I thought, why not write a script for something?
mhm. So I guess before we kind of get a little bit back to the videos and stuff for it, for you though, where did your actual introduction to the series start? Was it with Persona? Was it with SMT?
Oh, this is the question that makes me maybe I'll lose some street cred, but I did not get into the series until really late in my life. I only played Persona 4 for the first time when I was in college,
Oh, dude, no.
and
See, that's not like a you don't lose streak. I was ready. Like, so
no,
when people tell me that, I'm expecting them to be like, I started with Joker and Smash. That's like maybe the only way you might lose some credibility, and not even with me. No, no. Like, you started with like a game that's over 10 years old and everybody loves it. Like, no, that's no problem at
yeah,
all. No one's gonna bash you there. Like, I know people who started the series on the dancing games and now play all of them. So it's like there's no entry point that's weird. I always think like every person's entry point just kind of like it's like it says something about you even if you don't know it.
good. Because like I played Persona 4 when I was in my early 20s. I think I was in college, so I must have been about 20. Um, that was a couple years ago. Then I played 5, then 3, then 1 and 2. Then I played Nocturne, and I never looked back. I played almost every SMT game that people, frequently talk about. So like SMT 1, 2, If, Nocturne, 4, Apocalypse, DDS, Strange Journey, Devil Survivor, Rido, even Mach and X. I've played them and I love them.
I
Except for Soul Hackers. There are some I dislike, obviously, but
Oh yeah, like I don't think there's anyone out there who's like, listen, guys, every game that comes out of Atlus is a 10 out of 10. Like, nobody's like that blindly like fanboy. What's like really funny is like I made a post today, being like, what's one thing SMT or Persona does better than any other game franchise? And I didn't do that of like, hey, let's talk about how great these are, because I legitimately can't think of something that another game series doesn't do better, or I guess does better. Because like I was thinking about it, of like bosses, definitely no. There's series that have way more memorable bosses. Enemies, I think of something like Dragon Quest, or like something way before like Persona. Even though I love a lot of like the demons and stuff for it, but like I think in terms of like instantly like better and objectively better, it's such a hard kind of discussion. That's why it's been so funny watching everyone else's like. Because there's no like one right or wrong answer. It's all very like subjective and stuff. So I've been really enjoying like looking at everyone's answers of like how there are people, and I'm glad it wasn't just music or whatever like that. I'm glad it was like answers I wasn't really expecting, so that was kind of really fun for me. So for you though, since you have played quite a lot of them, I'm assuming 5 was the last one you played, like in terms of like recently released.
yes, yeah. I'm playing through Persona 5 Royal now because I just only recently got a console for like in the first console I've had in like
It went
almost a
PlayStation
decade.
2, Nintendo Switch.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, what is like your Moby Dick then? Like, what are you looking at? Like, I can't believe I haven't gotten to this yet, but I'm gonna get there one day.
Um, I've played almost all of them that I've really been raring to get to. The next one I'm hoping to get to, oddly enough, and I don't know anything about it, but I want to play Majin Tensei a lot. I've heard,
Majin Tensei is very, very solid. The one thing I will always warn people about, especially with the first one, because I think you have to start with the first one. Like, 'cause if you
yeah.
don't, then when you go to it, it's going to suck even more. I really like a lot of what Majin Tensei was trying to do. Like, that's one of those ones that's definitely up there of like, man, I really can't believe they haven't released this. But Majin Tensei 1, extremely slow. Even by
Hmm.
90s Super Nintendo RPGs, like, it's a very slow strategy game.
Jeez. Well, I'm looking forward to it. I like to think I have a lot of patience, but maybe this one will test it.
Well, I also think it's one of those ones of like, I think especially with how flashy and fast and how much control we kind of have in terms of how we play games right now. Like compare 5 seconds of a battle animation from like Majin Tensei 1 to like Super Robot Wars 30, where it's like it's not even like fair. Like it's so much, like so much more is going on. It's a lot of bells and whistles, stuff like that. Ryan brings up a
Hmm.
great point in chat. Amazing music though. I will say this. I'm not sure if you're someone who plays with like native hardware or emulators. I did play it on native hardware, which obviously then meant, hey, whatever's there, I gotta play it at its speed. So like maybe if you're like playing at like 200% speed, I could see it being more fun, but then you're having to deal with other things of like listening to the soundtrack at 200% speed, which is probably not that fun.
Yeah, we'll see when I get to it.
Are there any English ones that, or have you played all the English ones that you want to get to?
Um, that's a good question. I I have to get to. I've been putting it off for so long, but I have to play, if it counts, Tokyo Mirage Sessions.
What do you mean if it counts? A hundred,
Well,
100% again. I'm always one of those people. If you can dunk on that game, but you gotta try it. Like if you can, like it's like if you see someone, because we talked about tier lists earlier. If you see someone put Tokyo Mirage Sessions in like F tier or D tier, that just means they haven't played it. Because even if you hate that game, it is objectively a very good RPG. Like even if you hate
right.
the story, it is like one of like Atlus's like most tight experiences because like it's really short by their standards. It's like a sub 30 game if you like just blow through all the story missions. It's got a lot going for it. Like obviously you can't love J-pop, just like if you don't love J-pop, it's not going to change your mind for it. But if you're like even remotely interested in it, it's super super solid. Like it's mandatory play. Like I would even say like how it almost feels like all modern Persona fans feel like they had to play Catherine. If you are a fan of SMT, you have to play TMS. Like it's just that it's up there.
Right. I'm interested in it insofar as it is another game in this series I love that I
Hmm.
want to give it a try. But I'm a very story-oriented player. I can forgive a lot of gameplay sins if the story is great, and I've heard it's almost the exact opposite for TMS.
Really?
Yeah, I heard the story. Well, me personally, I'm more of a I don't want to be like an edge lord, but like I prefer a serious,
No,
more
I get it's
realistic story.
very like fluffy, but I will say
Mm,
what like I think if you go into it expecting a serious story, no, it will not have that at all. It nails that thing though of it has a good cast. The cast is what saves the
mm,
story. The cast is really good. Like they all have very good relationships to each other. This is really sad. Like the protagonist actually talks, which means that they can give them a personality. Because like nothing like sucks like the air out of my lungs more than when there's a cool protagonist in an Atlus game and they're like, let's make him silent, and all of his multiple choice questions never count. So at least like the TMS protagonist is like an actual character, even though he's like the definition of just like the everyman. But no, yeah, the cast saves that more than the story, and its cast of characters are just so weird. Like a 80s glam rock guy who came to Japan to be an idol, recruiter, a I think 11-year-old who is a idol but also a food network host. Like it's just got such a weird and like unconventional cast of characters, especially then when you kind of go into the fantasy like RPG side of it. Since you have a Switch, you at least get to play Encore. Like Encore is like the best way to play it and is super cheap nowadays.
hmm Yeah, I bought that game actually like a year ago, and I have it downloaded on my Switch Lite, and I have opened it once, played the first hour, said I'm gonna get back to this later, and it's been a year.
I would
So I
love
don't
to
know.
know like I need to like now pop it in now that you've mentioned it. I can't like imagine going from 5 to TMS. Cuz like for me it was like
Hmm.
that was the last big RPG I played before SMT5. So it'd be very funny kind of going back there in terms of it. Oh, I will say this though, cuz people never give TMS enough credit for this. Way better dungeons than it has any right to be. It is very good dungeon design.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, I'll be sure to give it a try.
So, oh man, yeah. Sorry, unfortunately, if you get me started with TMS, I just then start just waxing it off prophetically because I have way too big of a boner for that game.
Hmm.
Um, so kind of like going back though about your channel because there was another thing I wanted to kind of ask you about it. Um, do you find like because looking at ones that really stand out for you because you posted like a tier list of your own videos which boy if you ever want to say an idea I will instantly nope out of is me ranking my own videos. Like I don't have the patience to look at my own content as soon as I post it let alone let's review my own content. But like I'm like I just can't. I don't have it in me mentally for that. Also, I put way too much garbage online. But like when it came to like looking at all of your stuff, especially because a lot of it has kind of ballooned over the last like 3 months or so.
Hmm.
Um, do you find like now that five's out, like you have a whole bunch of stuff kind of ahead of you, or is it like kind of like okay, should I stick with more contemporary demons? Do I want to like go by which is maybe more interesting to me? Do you like kind of go off of what comments say? Like how do you kind of go in order of like what you want to do versus like what you think you should do in terms of what to cover? Because like you really don't have like a roadmap that would be kind of traditional. Like outside of I guess maybe you could say you did the leaders of Bethel around the time of five, but even that it wasn't really
Hmm.
like because of five.
Well, that one was because of five, because I got the early review copy and I had to make a video about it, and it was perfectly in my style.
Mm-hmm.
But to go back to what your question is, yeah, I don't really have a roadmap per se, more so just a list that gets longer and longer after every single upload. Like as soon as I made the Angelic Order video, I have so many ideas, and every single time I post anything, the list just gets longer and longer. And so what I'm trying to do now is I'm focusing on Abrahamic religious demons. Um, and with five, they have a lot of those as well in the games. SMT5 doesn't really have too much to add to the series with like lore implications. And plus, I cover like the real life history behind the demons anyway. So that doesn't really affect it too much. But I'm focusing on Abrahamic right now. And eventually, I will branch out into different religions, world religions like um, Greek, Egyptian, Hindu, even old school ones like Gnostic religions, Canaanite gods, all that type of stuff. So it's sort of a roadmap,
How
but it's
long
of
do I need to
religions.
wait for the 3 hour iDune documentary? That's what I need to know.
Well, I do plan to talk about something like that actually soon. I don't want to give away too much, but it's an interesting topic, I think.
Hmm.
I don't know if it'll be 3 hours, but it's coming.
I will say nothing like piques my like um nothing like piques like my like monsters and history boner more than when they announced more North stuff because I'm a huge Norse mythology fan. Just because I feel like there's been way more in recent media, but there's never really as much as you get like with Greek and other like kind of traditional like theology stuff. And the other one was I popped off so hard at the idea of Nua just because I knew her history and stuff with it. And man, they like did almost nothing really with her history in the story, but like like, it was one of those funny things of, like that's the stuff that always gets me excited with some of the demons in terms of like how much are they really going to delve into their origins, even though the answer 9 out of 10 times is usually pretty low. I will say though, without getting into any spoilers, I really loved, at least I didn't love how it was executed, but I at least loved how much there was able to kind of give the Egyptian thing with Khonsu's quest in five. I really liked that kind of exploration of all the different like Egyptian demons, even if that quest didn't get as much TLC as I think it probably should have.
Yeah, absolutely. When I research a video, I learn a ton while I'm doing it. So that Bethel leaders video, like you said, I want to avoid spoilers, but that alone got me very interested in the Egyptian whole lore behind it. So if anything, the game did a good job of intriguing, hopefully, a lot of people into doing further research into that topic, which I think something Megami Tensei has always done well with their games.
Hmm. And also, like honestly, like this is how you knew they did a good job with the leaders of Bethel and Five. Is that as much as I love that fourth and final big area, I cannot tell you how much I wanted like the second half of the game to just be, hey, let's go to Egypt. Let's go to like England. Let's go to each of their actual areas instead of they all came to us. I thought it would have been so much cooler if you could have like then gone to those areas just to really like sink into it even more. It was cool to see how they kind of made Tokyo feel like their areas depending on which spots they all got and stuff like that, but it was one of those funny things of like I just wanted to be wrapped up into that world so much more than it gave us. Not like I was sad, like because like what's there I really really like, but I think that's always a sign of good world building when what you do have leads you really hungry and like curious for more. Like there was no leader of like there was no character in five, like, especially out of the leaders of Bethel and stuff, who was like I got enough of you. I didn't need more. I'm good. Like I wanted like way more of everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. I've loved these designs. The Doi designs of these characters have always been awesome. I really like the nods back to their original real life counterparts. They did a great job of depicting them even in their personality, which, is something that would be very difficult to fully encapsulate. So, yeah, big shouts out to the writing team.
One of my I think this moment never gets enough love, but I'd be curious what you think. One of my favorite moments in the whole game is when the game slows down when you meet all of the Bethel leaders at the branch meeting, and it forces you to talk to everyone there. I love that stuff. I'm like, you need.
Mm.
It's like the game's like, I'm gonna make you learn about everybody, even if you just skip through it and don't care. It's like, hey, this is just a moment where you gotta like learn who these people are. Like, this is a big deal right now, because like nothing makes me more sad than when you see a really cool character and it's just here's an optional text box that doesn't matter at all, and 90% of people are gonna skip it.
Hmm. No, I absolutely agree. With the Bethel leaders in particular, it's important that they make you do that because the fact that, to me at least, I think the fact that these, historical gods that have been around for eons even deign to speak with you almost as a peer is a testament to like your power as an individual
Hmm.
in the, context of the game. And it's amazing world building that they speak to you and they give their opinions on specific things, even if it's aggressive or blasé. Uh, it's important that they give their opinions like that.
So here's the Sophie's Choice question before I get off of the Bethel boys.
Hmm.
Who was your favorite out of the leaders? So you can be Japan, it can be the Angels, or it can be any of the nationalities. Like, who was your favorite?
Definitely Odin. When I was
Really?
doing my video
Nice.
on the Bethel leaders, when I learned about the creation myth of Norse mythology and learning all about um, Odin, he is unbelievably cool. Like, I love Norse stuff as well after
Did
making that
you? I
video.
was gonna ask. So yeah, had you done much research in North mythology before that video?
Not really, only as much as I needed to do the meaning behind the persona videos that I
Mm-hmm.
used to make. And hope I still have one more to make. Um,
Canceled the series. I'm sorry, everybody. No more personas.
This is a little bit on hiatus, but only specific characters. But with the more grand videos that I'm making right now, um, it's all about going. It, another, name for the series. I call it SMT lore, but really it's just character and mythology deep dives. So I learn as much as I can possibly learn about these characters, and Odin being, the All Father, obviously entails that he's pretty important. So I should learn as much as I can about everything Norse has to offer. So
So
wow, it was awesome.
I've got some recommendations, but first I want to give a shout out. Thank you SMT5 for giving a good depiction of not only Odin, another good depiction of Loki. It was a good quest for Loki, very
Hmm.
accurate. Absolutely cucked Thor. Like you couldn't even give Thor like a fetch quest. Thor got nothing in 5. Like I get it, like because it maybe would have been too on the nose, but I think because of how many allegories there are to Nocturne, it's like you couldn't do anything with Thor. Like the one game where Odin and Loki are very prominently like and easily accessible. Very weird that Thor's just like, hey, it's just some optional demon. Like don't worry about it. The one thing I will say though, if you are a really, really big fan of this, because I've also picked this up and I need to sink more time into it, but there's a big DLC thing coming out for this. If you like Norse mythology and have like $20 to spend, Assassin's Creed Valhalla is chock fucking full of Norse mythology, and they're doing a basically pseudo sequel expansion in like 2 or 3 months, and it's just all about Odin. Like he's the entire antagonist of it, and it's all about like basically the Norse realm stuff. All of it's like they have a really fucking weird interpretation of him. Like he's like riding a boar or something. Like it's like a flaming like head like bearded Odin. Like it's such a weird take for it. But they always do such an interesting job with their like mythology for it. And Assassin's Creed Valhalla is like dirt cheap. Like so, if you ever get really bored and need like a 100-hour game that's just chock full of mythology stuff, that is a good way to go.
That sounds interesting. I might pick it up. I haven't really played Assassin's Creed before, but after I finish my recent playthrough of Persona 5 Royal, I'll get right to it.
I will say this. So Assassin's Creed, I haven't is very much less stealth now. It's pretty much just like a action RPG more than anything. Like it's all about equipment, it's all about stats. It's like it's way more about that and world traveling and mythology than it used to be about like sneaking and assassinating people.
Right. Okay. Well,
So this is going to kind of tie into what I'm going to talk about, but I also then have to be very selfish and ask this. So you mentioned you're working on another Persona 1. Are you able to say what it's about?
well, it's the the last one in this series. I've been covering the meaning behind the personas, um, all of the personas in reverse order. So aside from strikers, I did five strikers, four, three, two, and now I am on one.
Oh, okay,
Uh,
gotcha.
so
So
I just got to get
that's what you
that
mean by the order
done.
for that. Got it.
Mhm.
So my then funny question for you is, okay, because I was pulling it up for your video because I know you talked about it. Did you enjoy or did you love? Because it's the only two emotions I could think. Getting to research Les Miserables for a video in regards to uh, Persona 5 Strikers. Because I want you to know, I went into Strikers my first playthrough, spoiler free, and when I saw Jean Valjean, and I was playing the Japanese version because I couldn't wait a fucking year to play the game, and hearing Japanese people say Jean Valjean, not an easy thing for them to say.
Mhm.
Absolutely flipped out because I'm a big fucking musical nerd. So, like, for you, was that one of those funny things of, like, when you were researching it? Like, did you know anything about Les Miserables? Was that just, like, a really weird thing for it? Like, it felt like such, like, a... Especially, I think, compared to, like, Sophie's persona, not really, like, kind of tying into everyone else's as well. Thematically into the story, it definitely does. But her persona compared to, like, Wolf's, I was like, yeah, okay, well, like, we gave him, like, all the, like... He got the cool demon, basically.
Right. Yeah, no, learning about it was cool. I'm Canadian, so we have that like French kind of being held on a pedestal. A lot of people really like that stuff. So Les Mis was definitely something that was a huge cultural deal. But me myself, I didn't really get too into it at first, but I've heard a lot about it just by virtue of existing in Canada at the time. But then researching it, I came back and I was like, Jean Valjean, I've heard that before, right? I and I started researching it and I was like, wait, this is awesome. Like I feel bad for kind of blowing it off initially because I thought it was just some musical, like whatever, like something my mom would like, but it's really good.
Yeah, like, it was one of those funny things for me of the cutscene of him summoning it went by so fast, and the pronunciation was so butchered in Japanese. I didn't understand it, ironically, until I looked at the character model after the cutscene played, and I saw his prison number matched on the outfit. And I was like, it rocked way harder than I thought it had like any right to be. So I just thought it was like so funny of like how much that worked, and it was really weird because it's like I feel like especially with the design of all the characters persona in 5, I feel like for me it's very I love it or it's way too much and I don't like it. Like I don't like Zoro's design. I think Zoro's design, even though I get that it's trying to be very cartoony to kind of match Morgana's like perspective of it, I don't really like that. um I shouldn't like Ryuji's final persona, but the idea that it's just a giant fucking yacht is hilarious, so they get a pass for that.
Mm.
But like as a big literary fan, like I really kind of dug into how much fun they could kind of have with it, even though I didn't really love all of the depictions of them. And even like the ones I don't love, I still think are cool. Like I like that Johanna is in the game. I would like Johanna to not just be a motorcycle.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that. I
Like give
really
me
like the designs of five as well.
like give me the Final Fantasy 13 Shiva. It's two lesbians scissoring each other in a bike, and then she can be a human. Like give me like it can't just be a bike only. And if it's only a bike, then at least make it like Optimus Prime, where like then it talks. Like you can't
Yeah.
just be like, and I'm the bike now.
Well, researching the lore behind it, like you said, I do really like a lot of them. Some are, they're hit or miss, but the whole vibe of Persona 5 being um, more of a maybe Western inspired personas, obviously Captain Kidd, Arsene, um, Carmen, to name a few, Zorro, like you
Even yeah,
said.
even with like Robin Hood. Like when would you
Yeah,
ever have thought we get Robin Hood in an Atlas game?
absolutely not. I look forward to seeing all the, obviously because I made the series of the starting personas of all of them, and up until now, almost all of them were Japanese. Three was more Greek inspired. It was almost always following like a trend, and I would not think in a million years that it would be like literature, like Western literature, like least of all like Captain Kidd and Arsène Lupin and these like classical historical figures,
I
which is
will
is
say,
awesome.
going into ones that, man, I wish I loved a little bit more. I love the idea of like some Cthulhu representation, but like Futaba's like persona just never does anything for me. Just because you never really see it. It's just her in like the command computer thing. So like as a big like kind of like HP Lovecraft fan, like the idea that it's just like a far and away off kind of thing. Like I would love for like someone to have some like horrible like tentacle monster actually like be on the battlefield.
Right. Well, actually, I do also like H.P. Lovecraft, but on that same note, I'll justify it a bit because I like the fact that we never really see it because if we were to see it, who knows what might happen. I'd rather they keep it a mystery.
Undescribable horror, which then makes all of the art of Futaba's persona is always just like tentacle porn, but not tentacle porn. Just makes it even more like hilarious and depressing at the same time. Like, like if we think about this like for more than 5 seconds, this is a horrifying thing that's happening to her.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a testament to how good the design is that like it almost speaks to her as a character as well because she knows this like almost forbidden knowledge because of her macabre pasts. That it is in line with her, the unspeakable horror of like H.P. Lovecraft's The Hound or something,
But
like the
here's
Necronomicon.
my beef with that though. Why the fuck did she not get a H.P. Lovecraft and designed dungeon? Because the fact, like, when I finally saw her persona and it was not Egyptian themed, I'm like, what the fuck was I doing in this pyramid the whole time? Like, like after all of that, it was like, I mean, I'm not saying it has to be tied 1-to-1, but it just felt so funny to me that like outside of a boss fight and the whole dungeon, she has no ties to Egypt at all. Like outside of a tomb so I can die, that was kind of it. And I'd be like, think of like how much more fun. I mean, I feel like I say this about any complaint I have with Persona 5, but like the idea of having like a Lovecraftian horror dungeon and actually using that fucking stealth mechanic in Persona 5 would have been very cool. Of like, hey, you can fight these things, but they're going to be like 30 levels higher than you, and they all cast fear, and you all want to kill yourself after fighting them. Like that would have been a cool little thing to have, as opposed to like silly, wacky Brendan Fraser the Mummy, which I love the Mummy
Right.
vibes, but I would have liked a little bit more of like diversity in that sense.
Well, to justify it again, sorry to play devil's advocate over again, but her being called Medjed is Egyptian, and that is a deity that's talked about in their Book of the Dead, which can be translated to Necronomicon. And we could circle back to H.P. Lovecraft in a weird, like,
That's
broken
true.
telephone
That's
sort of
very,
way.
very true. And please never apologize for being devil's advocate, especially from someone who has done this show as long as I have. I appreciate any form of back and forth rebuttal as much as possible. Like, actually, this is reminding me, I had a Patreon town hall, and I'm feeling very bad I'm forgetting this gentleman's name, but one of the people who wanted to come on who was a patron is actually a teacher who just talks about like theology and stuff like this all the time. So we just like geeked out about like the series and like how it works with like that all. But like I feel like there's a large amount of people who are interested, but the amount of people who kind of get to come online and talk about it, especially kind of in a more conversational manner like this, is very very few.
Oh, yeah. I've always since I started, I've always wanted to do more conversational style videos. Of course, the videos I do are like obviously highly researched, highly scripted videos, but I
The
love
opposite of
stuff
this
like this.
podcast.
Yeah, I love being able to just like nerd out and be like, oh, actually, all nine of the angels in the three heavenly choirs of heaven and angelology are, and then I just name them off and what they do and like everything like that. Just like super nerdy, in-depth theology stuff, even like weird ones. Like we could talk about Norse mythology all day. We could talk
Hmm.
about Greek stuff. I love that, and I'd love to do it more.
So for you, if you ever did kind of want to step out of your norm in terms of what kind of you produce, what do you think it would be? At least like kind of like stuff you really want to do that you just haven't gotten to do yet, but is currently doable with your setup.
That's a good question. I suppose I'd want to talk. more about my interpretation of specific lore behind just not so much SMT, but just the demons. Like I said, I've been doing a lot more Abrahamic stuff, and forgive me, I'm not. If I come across as a Jesus freak, I'm not. But I really like to interpret like religious texts. I've always been interested in theology. I've always liked talking about it, and I think interpreting contemporary pieces in like even so far as like the Dead Sea Scrolls or really really ancient Hindu scriptures and Buddhist scriptures and what they mean as a whole, what they mean for us today, and what they meant for people back then is something that has been infinitely interesting to me. And it's something that I've touched upon a little bit in my videos, the Four Archangels videos. I like to give a little bit of my interpretation. Some people get mad at me for doing that. I'm sorry. I hope the video is entertaining nonetheless. But it's always been something I liked doing. And I want to do more.
So one of the interesting things, I was literally just thinking about this. So it's kind of funny that you mentioned like the Dead Sea Scrolls. I was like, I know this would never happen, but like, imagine how absolutely batshit insane, like Persona, whatever the heck they call it next, and they're like, hey, all of our main characters are going to have personas that are based off of like Judeo-Christian, like real things from like the Bible or like anything or like the Quran and stuff like that. Of like how absolutely insane that would be, but like. In terms of like what they've done, it wouldn't be that crazy, but it would just be kind of one of those funny things of like we've never really gotten it before, but I would absolutely like be all in for like really just out of left field ones. Like getting stuff from like literature back in 2017 seemed weird, but now kind of fits in a little bit more. Like because like we have to remember this is like a cast of like characters that literally is up there with like the Terminator and Jason from Friday the 13th. So the idea of having like Sheva and Jesus on the same like team is not really that crazy.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Or as Steampunk says, yes, just Persona meets Evangelion. Just actually just make that, just make them hold hands.
To elaborate on that a little bit, and I don't want to seem like a conspiracy theorist or anything like that, but as much as I would love that to happen, and trust me, I absolutely would. I think maybe SMT, the writers, and even the players a little bit, not to point any fingers, have kind of a bias against Judeo-Christian depictions. Like, there's a huge bias against law. People hate law. I am YouTube's number one law fan, as you all know.
Who's
Uh,
in that fan club? How big is the fan club? I need to know.
yeah. Please raise your hand if you also are a law chad like myself. But I think people they're comfortable with the depiction of law aligned demons being robots. Obviously, like look at Metatron, Sandalphon, people like them. The archangels as depicted in SMT 4. Sorry, is it okay if I talk about that a little bit? I don't know if it's a
Oh
spoiler.
yeah, I mean,
Um,
SMT spoiler babies covered your ears for like 5 minutes.
Literally, they shoot out of honeycombs like bees,
Mm-hmm.
which are drones. I get called a law drone all the time. So I doubt they'll go super in depth in like the personality behind law demons, which is a shame because if anybody here has watched my Four Archangels videos, there's a lot you could talk about with each specific one, even the Archangels and Metatron. I made a whole video about. They are really cool, and I think they could do a lot of them with them.
I think the Archangels especially get a little bit of a bad rap because they have the problem of they were overused. I mean, they still kind of are. I liked that five thankfully kept them very optional, although almost to a detriment of like the way they used them was a little bit rushed in my opinion. Um, is that they've always been that traditional. All right, it's the end of the game. Fight the Archangels, and then they go away after saying a line. Like they never really felt like a good depiction of it really too much before without like getting like that kind of research and everything else put in there before. So I definitely get it. I will say I'd love to know what you thought. How did you feel about five kind of tricking the user into law not really being law? I mean, obviously it is, but like, well, that was one of like my favorite things about like the alignment system in five. not really mattering 99% of the playthrough, but the fact that it kind of turned it on its head, that like law doesn't really feel like law, chaos doesn't feel like chaos, and neutral doesn't really feel like neutral.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I have heard a lot of people upset, or maybe that's not the right word for it, but for lack of a better term, they were upset at the law neutral chaos distinction. They wanted more than just, those ones because it's pretty predictable. Obviously, some people say chaos is just survival of the fittest, neutral is just like shrugging your shoulders, and law is like become a robot. And as much as I, would disagree, that is a sentiment that is held by a lot of SMT players. Um, but with five, they really shake it up. You're not just going through the motions. You should probably think about your decision and what it means narratively uh, before you make it, which is something that hasn't happened in this series since Nocturne, which is also did something similar. They even said in interviews that it wasn't law neutral chaos in Nocturne. It was different shades of law, and I think SMT5 does something similar, except
Yeah,
it's
because yeah,
different shades of chaos.
in five I would not call it law neutral chaos at all, which is kind of why like I like that we don't call it by anything, but by not giving it a defining name, unfortunately, then will lead people into like Old Faithful, like well, red's chaos, white's neutral, blue is law. So it's kind of one of those funny things because it's like you can think like if I switched the names for all three, if I made Yakumo, if I made Yakumo chaos, if I made the prime minister neutral and like whatever, like if I switch all three of them, they would still kind of make sense in terms of what it is. Like you could easily flip, especially with five, law and chaos, and you could still kind of see where they're both coming from in that aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. I really I liked it and I didn't like it with SMT5 because it didn't hold as much. I mean, the narrative weight behind each decision is there, but there's obviously less endings than in Nocturne, and that's fine. But what we do get is a bit underwhelming. I would outright say that I dislike two of the endings. Just
See,
straight up, I don't like them.
I would say I was surprised how much I grew to dislike Nocturne the more I got its endings. Because by
Hmm.
when I platinumed it last year, I grew to like the game less the more I 100%ed it. Whereas
Really?
100%ing 5 gave me a larger appreciation of the story overall. Like if you play 5 and just get one ending and are like that sucks, I get it, but I grew to appreciate all the endings collectively a lot more, which I then enjoyed that it was technically five endings that kind of all feed into each other of like different ways of thinking about it. Of like, okay, this would have been this way, but that's not really good. Of like they all have that thing that always makes you want a little bit more while getting you to think about it, and the one that does show you a little bit more after what happens at the end still makes your brain think in really interesting ways without spoiling. Whereas like Nocturne for me, all of the endings, and most of this is because of how the ending is executed. Like I absolutely hate the tower in Nocturne. I hate that you have to fight everybody. I hate that like the only times that you can skip bosses are for like the most mundane and random reasons. I hate who has to be the final boss. Like I think it's interesting the first, like what's funny is it's like the opposite. I feel the way most people feel about five with three, of like when I beat
Hmm.
Nocturne the first time, I'm like that's interesting, but I don't feel satisfied. And then when I beat it and get all the endings, I'm like none of these left any effect on me. Like even the most badass ending. By most people's standards, I wouldn't even say this is my favorite. The most badass ending by most people of doing True Demon, even that I hate because it's just a giant cock tease for something that will never happen. Like the ending of True Demon of getting ready for this all out war that you're never going to see or participate in means nothing because I know it's never going to be satisfied upon. Whereas the ending in 5, the I guess the expanded neutral ending, I really love, because my brain goes in a million different ways, because it could lead to nothing, it could lead to a spin-off game, it could lead to an alternate world, it could lead into something that affects the world and maybe like a spin-off novel of like they could jump into so many different ways with where the endings of 5 end off, whereas Nocturne's endings feel very cut and dry of I brought the world back, I didn't bring the world back, I'm alone, I'm with Lucifer, I'm doing this, I'm fighting. Like, it's very much of like, I get to the end of a chapter book, and they promise me part 2, but part 2 never comes. Whereas, all of the strings that you kind of pick up with 5, like, I feel like every ending in 5 could be a different game. Like, you could make each one of
Right.
those ending its own game, and that has an interesting enough narrative starting point. Whereas none of the endings in 3, with the exception of the true demon ending, we all know will never actually be a game. And even then, it would just kind of be boring. It would literally just be like, okay, it's a war. Like, and I don't think Atlus would, especially back in the PS2 days, they would not have a way to make that game satisfying.
Right. That's interesting you say that because not to be combative, I almost feel the opposite when it comes to the endings of each one.
Hmm.
I think really like Nocturne's endings because they give you so much philosophically to chew on, and the fact that they are, like you said, so final, almost cut and dry when it comes to this is how the world is going to be, and that's it. The way we describe it is the way it is, or even the regular demon ending, I think philosophically means a ton.
Oh, I love
Uh,
regular. Actually, regular demon ending is my favorite.
yeah, it's
The
awesome.
the
Even
you
true demon ending is cool.
I went. That was my last one, and I'd never gotten it before. Actually, that was the last ending I needed to beat the game, and I was so happy because what's the one thing normal and demon ending has that no other ending does?
Uh, I'm not sure. What do you mean?
God says, "Fuck you, I don't want to fight you," and then it just rolls credits. I love that so much.
Oh yeah.
I love that because like it's like of course why would God fight you with every ending like sometimes there's like the fact that it was like listen, you have to punch me now. And I'm like, I don't think I have to punch you to do this. Like, the fact that, like, there
Mhm.
was an ending that's like, I'm done with you. I'm leaving you. Goodbye. And Lucifer just has to be like, I'm disappointed in you, loser. I'm like, I love that. That's my favorite ending.
Yeah, it's great philosophically. To go back to SMT5, I wanted to give my thoughts on it. I obviously I love law. I dislike the chaos ending, and sorry to say, I absolutely hate the extended neutral ending, the secret ending.
Hmm.
Uh, you said that it allows for follow-up in different games. I would actually think it's the opposite. I think it led to a world, not to get too uh, spoilery, but I think it's very stagnant, and I think it kind of completely cuts off that universe from anything else that could possibly happen, just by virtue of the way SMT works.
Tony, where were you on the
Um,
spoiler cast, buddy? We gotta talk all about the mandala effect or whatever fuck it's called.
oh, I would love to. I love talking about Nocturne
I
and even Five.
So I don't want to get into it for spoiler reasons, just because it is still really fresh. But I do want to ask you this then. Do you view the extended normal ending in 5, do you view that as a pressing reset, or do you view that as a alternate timeline?
I view it as an ultimate finale. There is almost nothing that can be done afterwards. This is You've made the final decision, and at that point, they drive it home. There is no going back. There will
Well,
be nothing.
that's what's interesting though. But if you remember, there's a moment at the end where definitely not Colonel Campbell is telling us this is you're doing this as a Hail Mary. You're going to get rid of X, and X is never going to come back. But no one has ever done this before, and who's saying that it can't actually come back? Of like it's like saying, okay, we built the world's largest wall around us. Not even us can get back. So like it's like imagine if I don't know, make it like a random Attack on Titan comparison. Like, let's say these
Hmm.
people in an Attack on Titan scenario were like, we're going to get rid of all of the Titans by making the world's largest, most impenetrable wall ever, and we will live the rest of our lives out safe within these walls, and no one can ever get to us in our perfect little bubble. But there's a chance. Like, it's not saying it could. Hypothetically, there's like a 0.0001% chance that it could ever go wrong. And it's that 0.0001 for SMT5's ending that really makes me curious, because I'm like, then think about what would happen. If the whole point of that ending, after all that work, if something like that did happen, cataclysmically awful things would happen, because there's just no way for them to counter fight it. It would just be like, oh my god, we've just basically like screwed ourselves, and now we'll have to like think of some way to like either undo what you did in 5, or to then like combat whatever is going on. So like that's the kind of what if I talk about, in terms of like, I can understand like the finite of it, of like, hey, we're stopping this forever. Like I get that. Like my only kind of odd complaint with it is I wanted Aogami to talk through all of the endings. I think it is so weird how he only talks about one of the endings. Like, that's my real only complaint with the endings for myself personally, but I can definitely see how it's not for everybody.
Right. I can agree that that could be interesting narratively, but I think philosophically, and it's a bit underwhelming. I like, a person said in chat, the point of a lot of SMT games is the never-ending cycle of the way the world cycles. It's either law, chaos, pendulum swings back and forth. But I feel like it's important for the endings to feel like you're making progress, with that knowledge in mind, that the cycle will never end due to the cyclical nature of the way the world is created and destroyed, and all that stuff. Cultures are brought up and destroyed. But as long as you're making progress to a almost like a Buddhist sort of enlightenment goal, then it would be all made worth it. And to do what the ending of SMT5 does, what we're talking about, it is philosophically devoid of almost all merit.
I would love to pick your brain on this. So you have beaten 5, but have not beaten
Mhm.
Royal, correct?
Not Royal. I've beaten base Persona 5, but I've not beaten Royal.
Okay. So how do you then feel as someone who's like very kind of much into like the more SMT side of things, in terms of how they end those games? I absolutely hate like 5's ending with an absolute burning passion, and it's mostly just because of how much of like that feels like a cold reset to me. I hate that 5's just like, and we got rid of them forever. And it's like, which is hilarious, because then obviously then Strikers is like, well, no, fuck you, it does come back. But it is one of those funny things of like, I hate endings like that are like, we shot the bad guy in the head and we all lost our powers. Like, that's the most boring ass way
Hmm.
to end your story of all time. That thankfully, I hope you've not been spoiled on it. Thankfully, Royal does have a better ending than that. But it is one of those things of like that. I get that. Like when I see that as an ending, it actively upsets me. Of like, what a lazy way to make your story end, but be like, what a just cut yourself at the feet, because you're either cutting yourself at the feet and never doing anything interesting with these characters ever again, or you're immediately looking like a hilarious hypocrite once the sequel comes out, because everyone gets their powers back in like 5 minutes.
Right. No, I completely agree. The last thing I want to say after I beat a game or experience a piece of media at all is to say, what was that all for?
like
That is
like
not the ideal thing.
the shot of them all driving off at the end as just normal high school kids, to me, is just like the most. I feel like Stan from like South Park, of like when Stan starts to become like really jaded and just looks at everything like, ah, what the fuck?
Yeah.
What the fuck was like all of this for then? For you to have a cat? Was that the point of Persona 5? So that nerdy kid could push bald man and get cat after 80 hours? That's the point of this game? Make me think a little more, please.
That's something that was touched on, which I'm surprised when I played Persona 4 Dancing. It was touched on a little bit there, because Yu Narukami has an inner monologue that's kind of says like, ever since we finished with the investigation team, I've kind of been restless and didn't know what to do with myself. And I think that's something that I've thought about a lot. Like, what do the main
Oh
characters of
my
these
gosh.
stories
Tony, have you
do
not played
afterwards?
Arena?
No, I've never played Arena.
Okay, so I hope you pick up Ultimax. I don't know if you're a fighting game fan or not. The story
Love
is
them.
horrifyingly way too long, but it is filled with nothing but those conversations and questions with the entire not only P3 cast but P4. And it's great because the Persona 3 cast is so much older and they're all like stuck with this different weird level of survivor's guilt that no one in P4 has. So it's really interesting of like it's so easy to meme on it of like LOL Junpei's a little league coach now, but it's kind of like that thing of like being like hey, we all like we all kind of like you either some of us stayed friends or some of us just really had to fucking like get out of town or do something differently like so it's really interesting to me of like I love when games do that of like hey if we're gonna cut ourselves off at the feet it's gonna at least make sense. Thankfully Persona 3 and 4 never did that thing of like and all of your personas are dead, like it at least didn't really do that, but it was kind of a interesting thing of picking up on it, and I'm glad you mentioned it because that's one of my favorite things about Dancing All Night is it's such a perfect epilogue, even though it's in the like the
Yeah.
least conventional package ever. It's just one of those really fun things of like those characters still we still get to see them having their life in even before and after getting their dancing summoning powers back in a really satisfying way, which I liked. And the fact that like that game's ending is literally just the earliest thing that happens in the timeline of dancing, I think is very funny but very fitting. Like the way that that ends with just them talking at June S is like so perfect.
hmm Yeah, I've always thought about that, and it's interesting that you say that because that's something I was really thinking about. Almost at the end of every Persona game, I was just like, "Oh, okay, so when they grow up, like, what's gonna happen? Like, Yuna Arakami's just gonna be like a paralegal or something, or working 9 to 5 in an office after saving the world? Like, that doesn't really make much sense."
I'm so ready for you to like the fact that you've somehow missed Arena and Ultimac, like it's the P4 cast. There's not enough time for them to really get weird, but the Persona 3 cast is it's like it's a fucking like James Gunn movie. It's so funny and weird, of just like yeah, of course Mitsuru would start an international spy agency and fucking Akihiko just turns into a fucking Street Fighter character for no reason. But everyone's but that's the thing. It's cranked up to 11 in terms of like the cartooniness, but it all makes sense. Like none of it is like that's stupid. I couldn't see Yukari being an actress and being a Power Ranger character, but it's like I get it. Like the game makes it all make sense. And what's funny is like the character who probably gets the most boring evolution still has an interesting plot thread to them of like Ken is the only one who's still left in school. But he's now then left with this weird thing of like this team that he grew up with and had such memories with. He's the only one in school now, and he's now felt alone. Like the only one who he gets to hang out with and interact with on a daily basis is a dog. Which like I love
Yeah.
Koromaru, but like they do a lot of interesting things with those character dynamics. That I'm very curious then to kind of see what you would think if you liked that stuff in dancing. There's way too much of it, but there's a lot of it in Arena.
Well, that's really interesting. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. I heard Ultimax has a different story than base Arena.
So
I'm
yeah,
not
this is why
sure.
it gets weird. So thankfully, Ultimax has all of the DLC, and they sold the story mode of Arena as DLC. So I don't remember how it's presented, but basically I know it's all there. So Arena is the first part of the story, and then Ultimax takes place after Arena. So Arena is technically the first game, and Ultimax is the sequel. It's just I wish they like named it differently because I feel like normal people will just think that oh is this just the sequel? Because then like I know that they're not changing the menus at all, so you're gonna have to like go out of your way to do it. Like if you don't do it, like if you don't play Arena, you'll understand Ultimax, but you're gonna miss a lot of like the plot threads that are started up there because there is like just a totally different antagonist, a totally different like plot thread and everything that's going on. Um, so I wish that they like presentationally would kind of change it a little bit more for it, but yeah, it's at least all in one package, so they at least have that going for them.
Okay, that's good. Like I said, I'm really looking forward to it. I am a fighting game player. I really like them, but I've never really played one like this before. I'm more of a Tekken kind of guy.
Oh, okay.
So to play one like I heard this is like Blaze Blue, which is something I haven't really, sunk my teeth in.
It's like the hot take of the night. It's like Blaze Blue, but good, and that's coming from someone who
Wow.
likes Blaze Blue.
Okay, I'm not a huge fan of Blaze Blue. I played a little bit of Melty Blood. I'm not sure if it's like that,
Okay, yeah, yeah,
but
yeah,
I'm looking
yeah.
forward to it.
There's some definite, like, honestly, like a lot of anime fighters, especially the 2D like sprite ones like that. Like, if you can pick up and fuck with Melty Blood, you'll enjoy Arena, because like for me, not saying that they've peaked, but in terms of the type of game that Arc System made or used to make back when they did pre Unreal Engine 3D stuff, um, Arena for whatever reason is like the perfect mixture of like easy to pick up and play, super deep, but still fun for both skill levels to play at, which I think was perfect considering it was coming from an RPG.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I'm excited to pick it up. I'm sad it's gonna take a while to release on PC, but I got it. I got my fight stick already.
Well, I
I'm good to
mean,
go.
it's at least coming out day and date on consoles and PC. At least it's not going to be like a staggered release.
Oh, okay, good. And I hope there's rollback.
There will not be. There should be.
Ah,
There won't be though.
man.
Yeah, I'm one of the weirdos who's like, please delay Ultimax. I want to play it, but I don't want the game to launch with like, I don't want the game to launch with no rollback because I know what that's going to do for the game and it's not going to be good.
Yeah, there's kind of no excuse at this point for a fighting game to release without rollback netcode,
How
considering
did
most
you
of
how
the
did you
games ever will be
feel?
online.
Because we didn't talk about this because the podcast has been kind of in a weird limbo state of like holiday stuff, but they commented on this. How did you feel when the director gave the "We know you want rollback. It's not in the game, but if you guys say you want it, we might do it."
It was mind-boggling. I don't know why. We know enough about fighting games now to understand that like rollback netcode isn't optional anymore. Delay-based netcode is not good.
Unless your
Everybody
name's
knows this.
Nintendo, and even then, we won't let you get away with it. But like, it casts a bad look on your game without anyone even touching it.
Yeah, it's a buzzword now. And even people that don't really know that much about fighting games are like, "Oh, rollback netcode, that means bad." So to see this, like 90% of all fighting games matches, I would even say more, like 99% are played online, peer to peer. It
Especially now with like
needs
the
to be bad.
quarantine. Like how many people are like if Evo is not happening in person, do you think like I'm going to be inviting like 19 of my friends over to my house? I would love that, but it's just like it's just not the world we live in. Like we're not able to just to like have that be the way we play this game competitively.
Yeah, I mean, we live in a society at this point. We need good online. Having good multiplayer, having good online should be number one priority. Making sure the rollback netcode is in there, making sure you can have instant rematches, making sure there's crossplay. I mean, having those three things alone, instant rematches, crossplay, rollback netcode, would make your fighting game a cut above 90% of all fighting games ever released.
Yeah, and like that's why
Hands down.
I made that stupid Family Guy meme, but it's so true. When you're looking at something like fucking Power Rangers, the Warner Brothers Multiverses game, and goddamn Nickelodeon All Star Brawl, when those have better netcode than Persona 4 Arena, that's not a good look.
Yeah, this is no good. This has been something that's killed fighting games like on release, having bad connection. Like it almost killed Street Fighter. The online was so bad, Street Fighter
Don't
5.
worry, Street Fighter V has been trying to kill itself for like 5 years anyway. So like,
Yeah.
Street Fighter, Jesus, Street Fighter V, man, what a game I want to love, but Jesus, it is always makes it really really hard for it. But no, yeah, like you're so right. It's like one of those things of like even with Tekken, like when Tekken 7 was out, it was like God, dude, we love this game, but can we? And that was a game that launched with pretty good netcode, but because it became such the norm, it was like, hey, dude, like you got to make this happen.
Yeah. Like the meme of Harada saying like Tekken 7 has rollback and delay. Tekken is 3. It's like what are you talking about? It doesn't make any sense. We know we're not dumb. Like consumers are not dumb. You sometimes they are. But a lot of times they know what's good and what's not. They can see that okay, this will have bad online. This is a fighting game. This will have bad online. I should not play this because I want to play online with my friends. It makes sense. even people that don't know anything about fighting games and netcode and what have you, they will just put two and two together.
You would be surprised though, because of how I've definitely been one of the early, like literally like since the game got announced. I was like the first. There's two things I think there's one thing it needs. It needs netcode for sure. The other thing I think it would also be such a dumb thing that they still haven't commented on is crossplay. Like you've got to do crossplay too. Like that's so obvious that I think no one's talked about crossplay. But also, I do want to give a shout out to Robert in the chat. Definitely brings up a great point. Gotta love a podcast that has intense religious and philosophical debate and then rants about fighting game online netcode in the same episode.
Yeah.
So, no, but yeah, like that's just like the fucked up thing about it is like, and what was funny was his quote about we'll think about it or it's a possibility rubbed me the wrong way of like, dude, you know you're gonna do it or not. Like, just either say it's gonna happen or not. Like, I believe it's gonna happen unless the game sells really bad. I think Atlus is looking at it like, hey, here's your budget for this game. We will not let you patch it unless it's either super broken or it has to have this. Because, like, there is time that goes into putting it in there, but it's not like it's some, like, Herculean effort. If fucking Code Mystics can port King of Fighters 94 to 98 with rollback, like, it's not impossible. But the thing I wanted to bring up that rubs me the wrong way is that they're looking at this release like the definitive version of this game. That's why it has almost all the DLC. It's releasing on as many platforms that they view as viable. So nothing says my game is definitive, more like the director himself saying, hey, we might give you something later.
Yeah, that is quite strange. And the way he said potentially we could, we might make it playable online. Like, it's so weird, and like it's not a threat or anything. I don't want it to come across like that, but to the person who said that, this is not optional. If you don't make this good online, it will not do as well as you think it's going to. Like, this whole idea of like, if it sells well and if people want it, we might do it. But that's like a catch-22 because you need it to sell well to make it better, but it won't sell well if it's not better. So what's going on? Make it better.
How do you feel about, especially with the Western thing of this? I genuinely think that making this a $30 digital-only title is just going to make this be like, the fans are going to buy this and fucking no one else.
Yeah, it seems that way.
Like, I think the lack of physical, which I still think that they could fix. I will say this: we have a better chance of getting this game released physically than we do at getting rollback netcode, which is kind of fucked up.
Yeah.
But like the thing about it though is like, so I don't think I got too much. I'm trying to think of the reception I got from the video for it. So one of the things with why I was like saying the game should be delayed is for it's like, if you think the game could get this later, wait and sell it to us later for that. Like, I genuinely think if they just were like, hey, we're delaying the game for 3 months, but instead on the original release date we're going to do a PC and console beta for rollback, and the beta will last up until the game releases. Like, I think that would be because remember, this isn't just like we're releasing this because, hey, fuck it, we got bored. This is an anniversary game release. Like, this is supposed to mean something to you. Like, it's one of those things of just like, I think that would be such a user positive thing to do. But I also don't think they're going to do it because like they've had this release planned for like months and months and months, as Steam database has shown. So like, I don't think anything like that's going to happen. But it just sucks because, like, I think that there are virtually no negatives to them delaying it. The only one I can think of is it's releasing right before their financial year ends, and they want to have one more big push. And I don't think it's going to be a big push.
Yeah, the more you say about that, the more it makes me think it's really insane that already with the whole Persona 25, they wanted to, like you said, they want to make this a big thing. This is one of the first things of note, aside from the ice cream or whatever, that they
the ice cream in concert, man, the fucking slams.
Yeah, this is the first game, so they're like, this is gonna be sick. This is the first game. Already, it was a disappointment because people were hoping for it to be a new game. Of course, guys like me and maybe you, I don't want to speak for you, but I'm excited for it.
Oh yeah,
and the fact that it's not even gonna be the best potential port of it that it could be is like mind blowing. It's like everybody was expecting a new game. It wasn't. Disappointing. It's an old game that people have wanted ported. Okay, that's cool. But it's still not good enough. I get it. You don't want to make a new game because that would take a long time. At least make the one you're porting the best it could possibly be. It doesn't make any sense. Make it
No,
good.
I'm definitely as passionate about that because like I don't get to talk about this as much just because it's not been really relevant for a long time. But like this is one of the most played games I've ever touched. Like this was my fighting game. This was the game I went to Evo for. This was the game I fucking mained. This was like the fighting game I played. And it's one of those things of like when I play a 2D fighting game, very often I will be playing it and then thinking, oof, I'd like to play Ultimax more. Like, I've been dying for a modern port of this game since it fucking came out in 2014. So, it's just the unfortunate thing of, I think this is just a game that is cursed to just kind of repeat its own launch of releasing a year after new consoles, not releasing on those new consoles, and hoping it sells well, and being surprised that it didn't sell well because of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, I would give anything to see, because Evo and just tournaments in general have been kind of a drag. Uh, with like the games. I don't really care about a lot of them. Really,
It's
I
been
don't
a
really care
drag.
about
Like
Mortal
fighting games have
Kombat.
been in a really weird rut of like indies have been rising up because Capcom has just been doing amazing at everything but fighting games. Street Fighter
Hmm.
V is too big to kill, but Street Fighter 6 is in such development hell that it can't come any sooner. Um, you either like the Bamco games. I love Tekken 7. I love Soul Calibur 6. God knows neither of those are like big crazy winners. I'm not a NetherRealm fan. Those are definitely like we've just been doing the same thing for so long that it's like here's Injustice, here's Mortal Kombat, here's Tekken, here's Street Fighter 5, here's a random indie game, here's an Arc System game that some people will play but everyone else will forget about after like 3 months. It's like I will pay anyone listening to this right now if you can tell me what DLC characters are just about to come out for Grand Blue Fantasy Versus. And I'm pretty sure most of you will not be able to answer that question. It's just like one of those things that fighting games are in just such a weird kind of like I feel like we've not been excited about fighting games as like a community, not even like fighting game community, but as just a general video game, not counting Smash Brothers just because it's its own thing. Since Dragon Ball Fighters. I feel like Fighters was the last time people were like, holy shit, this is a big deal.
Hmm. Yeah, for me, I really, really, really like Tekken 7. It's one of my favorite fighting games ever. Uh, I like Guilty Gear Strive. I'm pretty bad at it, but I like it. And everything else is kind of a wash. I mean, even look at the past Evo before it was canceled. It's like them's fighting herds. The pony game. What are you talking about? Like, where are the good games? I played Melty Blood Type Lumina. I didn't really like it that much because it didn't have my main from the previous one. Played
Jeans
Mortal Kombat
Girl.
11. Yeah, yeah, Aoko. Yeah, yeah,
Are
yeah.
you hyped they're bringing her back?
They're bringing her back, but with the Type Lumina business, I don't know. Maybe I'll try it out.
The
I still
fact
have it
that listen,
downloaded.
Melty Blood's thing for me is this: the fact that Melty Blood finally came out on consoles. That's all. That's like that seemed like the most undoable thing ever. The fact that like Melty Blood actually finally crossed the barrier of entry and was no longer the definition of poverty fighters. But no, I definitely get you. Like we've been living in a generation where like, especially bringing it back to Ultimax. If you wanted anything like Ultimax, you had to play fucking trash like Cross Tag Battle,
Hmm.
which nobody wanted to do. I'm sorry, Cross Tag fans. I'll review that game soon, I promise. Hey, Demicrow, don't be bashing SNK heroines. SNK heroines is at least stupid. I like when a fighting game is like stupid, like they're doing something really really fun. But I did forget. Demicrow was awesome enough to give a super chat and ask a very important question. Tony, when is the ideology video for the Jack Bros?
Okay, I'm gonna give a really serious answer to that joke question. Um, Interesting you say that because I did plan to talk more about demons of folklore rather than religion. So the Jack Bros, 100% I want to talk about.
Little do
I'm
you
not even
know,
joking.
Demicrow is definitely not joking, and I think 90% of Demicrow's comments are just about Jack Bros because of how passionate they are about those three fellas.
Wow, God bless. Yeah, I definitely will actually be talking about the big three, Jack Bros. They're awesome.
Can we just like give like a moment of silence, by the way, for Jack the Ripper for constantly like just being the least loved out of the Jack Bros? Like there's his
Oh
fans, but
yeah.
like it's very like there's no Jack the Ripper merch in the last like decade out of Japan. They're like, who?
There's more merch from like King Frost.
That's true, but like that again, it's a very low bar. But like I think
Yeah.
because he is such a oddball choice. Although also he is based off a serial killer rapist, so also
Hmm.
probably where's more merch? I don't know why it just hit me. I was like, where's the merch for the serial killer guys? Can we fucking bump up the serial killer merch?
You forget that part of him. At least he's kind of
He's
cute
so
looking.
lovable when he's not doing the thing he's known for ripping. Yeah, when he's not ripping, he's a lovable face. Jesus. Okay, well, hey, we're like an hour and 20 minutes into this. We should talk about our actual fucking news from this. So, the one I kind of want to get out of the way, because I didn't think we would actually bring up Persona as much as we did. Persona 5 Strikers, by the time everyone hears this on the audio feeds, because we're recording this Monday, by the time this is up everywhere, Persona 5 Strikers is free on PlayStation Plus. Well, PlayStation Plus free, but if you want Persona 5 Strikers, this is a huge deal. They have never given away a game this big in a really long time. Like the last Persona game that was on traditional PlayStation Plus. You can get vanilla P5 on the PlayStation Collection if you have a PS Plus with a PS5, but again, it's vanilla. Like if it's 2022 and you've not played vanilla P5, like I think there are other things you should be doing with your life, especially with your PS5. But yes, P5S, if you've not played this, even if you don't like Persona 5, it is free. Check it out, play it, love it. It is super super fun. I wanted to ask you though. So, Tony, when you heard that this was coming to Plus, like, did you have like a thought about this? Like, did you kind of think like, for me, I'm kind of surprised that Atlus isn't making a bigger deal about this because I'm like, they could have just done like looped this into the anniversary. Like I bet you this isn't even like part of the anniversary announcement at all because their next video is in February. It's like why not just be like, "Hey guys, we're celebrating Persona's 25th anniversary by giving this away on Plus." Like this is a game that's 11 months old. Like that's a big deal.
Wow, yeah, that's true. I didn't even really think about how old the game was. It's still new and it's really fun. Like I don't know if it's a I saw your tweet about it. I don't know if it's a Musou game. I don't know if it's a whatever it is, but I don't usually
Whatever the
like
hell it
games
is,
like that.
it's good at least.
Yeah, I don't usually like games like that. I don't really like Dynasty Warriors, all that stuff. But Strikers was really fun. It's one of the some of the most fun I had playing a game in the last year. It's just it was good. The story was cool. I enjoyed uh, interacting with the characters I came to love all those years ago. Again, it was just a great time. The fact that they're giving it away for free is, I don't know if it should make me worried because I don't know the sales numbers for it, but I assume it did pretty well.
So
Um,
it is the best-selling Persona non-mainline game of all time. Like it's even sold better, I think, than maybe even P1 and P2. But it's sold over 2.5 million copies last time I checked. So it's sold better than PQ. It's like the best-selling one in the series. So it is not because of poor sales. Thankfully, I do understand people checking about that. That's mostly Sony. Every now and then will realize, hey, we've released a lot of trash on PlayStation Plus, so let's like get a
mm,
banger. Because if you remember, they did the same thing with Final Fantasy VII Remake last year. Like right when they announced the PS5 version, they were like, "Hey, we're going to give this away to PS Plus." Literally a year after its release, and that game sold millions. So being on Plus doesn't necessarily mean it's a financial failure. That just means that Sony is trying to be savvy with their marketing. They probably were like, "Hey, this is a big game. This sold really, really well. There's an anniversary going on, so let's work with Atlus and Koei Tecmo and try and get some money from this." And I'm sure this will make them extremely profitable because, like I said, it's been a long time since an Atlus game from Atlus. Well, Atlus published, because they didn't make the game. But the last game they did this actually was Ultimax. Ultimax was the last time Persona was on PlayStation Plus traditionally.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, I'm really happy about it, and I would say that I don't know if I've given it enough thought, but I think it is a good entry point into the series. I think if you played Strikers, and that would do a good job of making you want to play more games in the series, for sure. If it was my first game, I would immediately want to go play Persona 5. I would buy it. I think it's still on sale on PlayStation, so they might have done that to coincide with the 75% off. I don't know if that was a year end or if it's right now.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think it's going to do great for the series. And I hope that if they get their ducks in a row, Ultimax will do something similar for a whole nother crowd.
Did you play it on PC or console?
I played Strikers on PC, and that was a bad experience at launch. It just crashed all the time. I would lose hours of progress,
Listen,
but I got it.
Atlus and a lot of Japanese companies not known for PC ports.
Yeah, yeah, but I still got through it. It ran well when it wasn't just closing at random points, seemingly at the points where I saved the longest time ago. But hey, we made through it. It was fun.
So I will say this: if you are someone though with a PlayStation 5 and PlayStation Plus, I would say that PS5 is actually the best way to play it, at least in terms of ease of use. I've not compared it with the PC version very much since launch, but with PS5 you can literally run it at native 4K, and it is the smoothest 60. So it isn't a native PS5 game, but they actually went and patched it when the PS5 came out for the game in Japan, and it has native like resolution and graphical improvements from it. Oh, and actually the best part, they literally removed all of the loading. There's no loading in the whole game. When it loads, it fades to black and then you're in the game. Like there's no load screens at all.
Wow. Wow, good call. Yeah, no, if you've managed to get your hands on an elusive PlayStation 5, which for the longest time I was convinced didn't actually exist and everybody was just joking. If you can get that, then pick it up. By pick it up, I mean
Also,
play it because it's free.
everybody, please go watch my what video to buy DLC for in P5S because it's very easy. Buy the music and ignore everything else because playing Persona 5 Strikers with Persona 1, 2, 3, and 4 songs is very surreal and very funny.
Cool. And then when you're done, watch my lore behind the Personas video on it.
Oh yeah, that is true. Which you would want to wait till you beat the game because there would be spoilers for that.
Yes, yes, there are.
But yeah, so everybody go check that out. Oh yeah, a little bit of housekeeping. There will be a video up for this tomorrow, kind of describing it, but we're gonna do a game club. I'm not sure. I'm still thinking over why I want to do the details for this. If I want to make it a weekly or a 2 times this month kind of thing. The game club, instead of dragging another host on to talk about this, I'm gonna make it a town hall. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a video going over the details, but basically if anyone wants to start and replay the game with me or just play through it or mess around with it some more, we will be talking about Strikers at least 2 times this month on the channel in terms of a community setting with so many people jumping into the game free on PlayStation Plus. Or if you just want to be like me and be like, hey, I got that weird Switch copy. Let's see what the Switch version's like. So check it out. It's basically free. Even if you don't have it and you're like, man, this game sounds cool, and you have a Switch, play it wherever you can. It is a great game. Just please, please, please play it. It does not get enough love, especially from the storytelling and the music and everything. But you did mention sales, and that does transition into our last thing we were supposed to talk about. Because we did find out Atlus was like, hey, I guess we should tell people how much money we made. Because we're are financially obligated for those things. So were you surprised when you saw SMT5 has already sold over 800,000 worldwide?
Um, no, and I'll tell you why. I knew from the beginning. I have that quote pinned on my Twitter that says SMT5 will be the Persona 5 of SMT, and it's proven to be
I forget
true.
when was that tweet like even made? Wasn't it like 2-3 years ago now?
No, that was August 12th, 2021. It was on a
Oh,
podcast I was
it was
on.
that post Nintendo Direct high.
Yeah. I knew that it was going to go the way of Persona 5, and it kind of was. Just beloved. People will. Maybe I shouldn't go too deep into what I meant by it because the beauty of that tweet is that it can be taken in
You can
any way
think
you
as
want
good
it
or as
to.
bad as you want. That could be a good thing. That could be a bad thing. Like even though, yeah,
Yeah.
like financially just speaking, though, it's definitely true. Which is so funny. Of like, I think though, when if because what was funny is there were some people who, for whatever reason, thought this game was gonna sell meh just because it did release in a really busy month. But I think two things helped out with it a lot. Being a Switch exclusive did definitely help get it attention more than it would if it was a multiplat. Like if this was
Mhm.
released on PC, PS4, and Switch at the same time, I actually think it would have sold less. Like it wouldn't have had that bump for it. And the other reason with that is also due to the fact that we are, well, at least I think most people don't talk about this as much as I do. This is a game that was published on over half of the world by Nintendo. This is a Nintendo published game in everywhere that's not America or Japan, and that's a huge deal. Like Nintendo advertised the absolute hell out of this.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah. It sounds weird the way you say it, what you said, but I do agree in some sense. The fact that it was a Switch exclusive pushed the sales a lot because it became almost a must play on the Switch. If you ha had a Nintendo Switch and you even had a passing interest in role-playing games, you needed to buy SMT5. It was kind of the RPG to play on that system, and it still is, and it will be for a long time.
So if you had to like, obviously we're being like tinfoil hat over here for it. Would you guess that I don't know. What do you think it'll top off at? Because it's already sold over. It's already sold way past what four had done previously with it. Like this is one of those ones of I think for me, I think 1.5 is probably where it will top out in terms of copies sold on Switch. I'm sure because of how they're going to distribute the game later on, it's going to come to PC within at least the next 2 years or so, and then I'm sure a PlayStation 4 and 5 version, and God willing, an Xbox version. Like once it then starts coming to other platforms, I think it'll have like that long tail effect of like it's never going to have as big of a high for it, but I think like it'll roll over 2 million. I think once like PC comes. Like do you think it's going to have legs longer than this in terms of whether it just be the Switch version or whatever?
Um, I'm not super great at that kind of market speculation. I mean, I just read the Bible and scripture all day and all that stuff. I do read the wikis, but if I had to hazard a guess, um, yeah, 1.5, because that is their expectations, I believe. They said, then, like you said, they're probably, hopefully, going to port because that'll set a good precedent. They know how much money they can make when they port games. Look at Persona 4 Golden, look at Persona 5 Strikers. They just uh, it keeps blowing us away how much it sells. Um, it already sold incredibly well. The better it does, the more hopeful I am that Atlus will finally embrace the future and put games on Steam and release on multi-platform and just make it a utopia for SMT and Persona fans.
I couldn't help but notice you left out that super awesome Nocturne HD PC port.
Oh yeah, I did. I did. I did.
Let me tell you, if you want to talk about a PC port that like everyone asked for, but no one was saying thank you afterwards, it was Nocturne HD. Of like Nocturne HD is
Yeah.
like yeah thanks, but even you'll even like know like it's easily like it's easily this I guess no the second softest selling. It sold better than Catherine Classic, but also Catherine Classic did not sell very well. So it's kind of one of those funny things of
Mm.
like it's good that they put it on PC, but it was one of those weird ones of like there was definitely a market for it, but I think because of that release kind of having the dark spots over it because of like some of the just things around it just left like that ruin it was like golden that's a huge deal that's crazy Persona 5 coming to it
Mm.
crazy absolutely like crazy when 5 will that's going to be crazy Nocturne HD was just kind of like the redheaded stepchild like well I'm glad you're here Timmy but you could have dressed up a little bit better.
It's such a shame too, because Nocturne is one of the most beloved games in the entire franchise, if not the entire PS2 catalog. And the fact, and ever since it was announced, I was heckled at all sides, called a clown. I was like, this is gonna not be good. This is gonna suck. And look at it. I hate the voice acting. I hate the lighting. I hate. The only thing that's good is they got rid of random skill inheritance. They put some quality of life stuff in, but everything else sucks. And everybody was like, "No, you're way too negative. You're such a hater." And I was like, "Okay, whatever you guys say. I'm gonna stop talking about it." And then it came out, and then wouldn't you know?
Waiting for those
But
Nocturne
not to get
H
on my high
any
horse.
day now. Those Nocturne HD defenders, they're coming out. They're coming out of the woodwork anytime now.
Yeah,
But I mean, I
I
at
mean,
least hope that. See, I say that, but then we look at Ultimax. I would hope that our vampant complaints about Nocturne HD would have led to other ports being less slapdashed, but then now all the complaints we talked about with Ultimax then makes me think that they haven't learned their lesson if they're saying like, well, we'll wait and see. Like, no, you shouldn't have to wait and see. like the fact, because like remember you were talking about like random skill inheritance that came out 2 months after Japan got the game as a patch. Like that's
mhm,
ridiculous.
it's crazy. I mean, you say, and I don't want to take it out of context, but you say you want ports to be less slapdash. In a weird way, I would kind of like it to be more slapdash because what I really like is the games. I think Digital Devil Saga is great. I think the Raito games, especially Raito 2, are great. I think if they just tweaked it, made it run well, like as in, consistent frame rate, does not crash, and just release it on Steam, kind of like the way like the Legend of Heroes games did, like Trails in the Sky 1 and 2 and 3. Um, that's all I want. Just release Digital Devil Saga 1 and 2 as a bundle for like even like $40, just PS2 ports.
To
I
be
would buy
fair,
them
reminder: Nocturne
instantly.
HD sold for 50. Another very stupid idea of
Yeah,
selling
very
that game for
strange. Plus
50.
DLC.
So, no, I definitely get where you're coming from. Of like, there is definitely a thing that could be there of less is more. Because I think when this was first announced, I was so excited finding out that they were porting Nocturne in Unity. And after looking into things, like it's literally they just stuck a PS2 emulator into Unity, which then would hypothetically mean that putting all of those PS2 games on other consoles will be demonstrably easier. The problem
Mhm.
is then they were putting their fingers in the pie in all the wrong ways. And even if like you like some of the things, like if you like the voice acting or if you like the lighting changes, it's like I should also be able to turn all of that off. Like I should just always be like, hey, I would like the original game. And if like the fact that your only option to play that is a PS2 or to buy the PS3 digital copy, like that still is a shitty answer in 2022.
Yeah, with how beloved these games are, there's really no excuse as to why you can't easily play them because Atlus is not a defunct company. They're doing well. There's no reason why they can't just release them. And I like a person in the chat said it, I don't want all this extra stuff. If you release these games, just let people play them. People want to play them. And if you release Digital Devil Saga 1 and 2 as a bundle, as they are, even just like release them, just slap them like the Unity engine with the PS2 emulator. If you just include ROMs of like Digital Devil Saga 1 and 2 and just throw them up on Steam, I'll buy them. Hell, if you want to go above and beyond, remove random like skill inheritance to like some other games on the PS2, um, or make it so like karma grinding or Atma grinding in Digital Devil Saga is a little easier, like a little quality of life tweaks. That'll be great. But don't jack up the price. Make sure it's not prohibitively expensive. Make sure it's the quintessential way to play. It runs well, looks good, um, and just make sure it's accurate to the source. And bam,
So
millions of copies sold. I guarantee.
definitely not millions. Definitely not.
Billions.
Those PS2 games are not going to be top of the charts. I will say
Maybe
this.
not.
I definitely am wholeheartedly agree with you. There's a problem though in terms of balancing what they want to charge and what they are actually worth. Like when I was going through my tier list of talking about how do you release some of these games that we still haven't gotten, it's like, dude, you can like realistically, you could not charge more than $20 for almost any of these old Atlus games. Like, and that's why
Yeah,
like
for sure.
they're so consistently weird. Of like Golden, you could have charged more for 20. Like 20 is a steal for that. But then Nocturne for 50, you look absolutely stupid. But then looking at something like SMT 2 or If or Devil Summoner 1, these games that have never released, like stuff like that, it's like you should probably just release that at $20, but I bet that they would look at all the work that goes into translating that game officially and be like, we've got to charge like $40 for this like Super Nintendo game.
Yeah, I don't know. They value their IPs highly, which is a good thing, I guess. But like,
It can be a
you
detriment.
can't
It can be
buy
a
it.
detriment if it's not done correctly.
Yeah, we can't play these games. Like nobody will play Digital Devil Saga 1 and 2
Oh,
anymore. Like the average Joe.
I'm gonna make a prediction. I would love to know what you think about this. I won't even predict you. I'll ask you. Will Persona 3's port that we're getting this year, will Persona 3's port cost the same or more or less, whatever you want to pick, than P4G?
Um, I think I think more. I think they're gonna attempt to like super, giga improve the game like they did with Nocturne HD,
No
and they're not gonna do
way.
the Persona 3
No way,
portable.
Jose. I'm
I
ready
think
for
they're gonna
portable.
try.
It's going to be portable with 4K textures. That's all we're going to get, if we're lucky.
Do you think so?
Oh, if we're
Okay.
lucky. Yeah, because it's like, think of how much they had to like stick their hands in the pie for Nocturne and how messy that got quickly. Imagine if they had to fuck with P3's code. Do you think they're gonna fucking get
Mm,
code from a PS2 game and get code from a PSP game and then put it into a PC game? Fuck no. That's like
yeah.
asking, because they're also like finding like the cheapest port houses possible, which understandable. Like if the cheaper you can make the game, the more money you can make at the end for it. But it's one of those things of like they value their IP, but the shitty realistic answer is they don't value it enough to do it themselves, which I think like makes the difference between certain companies. Like when I know Square Enix is remaking a game, I know they're remaking the game.
hmm I mean, hopefully they wise up. Yeah, they do like a Final Fantasy 10 PC port type of thing. Even though I don't like Final Fantasy 10 too, that's a whole other issue. But just by far making it the definitive way to play the games would be great. Not making sure it's easily accessible for people because I just feel like this is anecdotal, of course, but when I have a friend who is semi interested in what I talk about on YouTube. He wants to play SMT, and when Nocturne HD was released, I was viscerally upset because he was like, I was like, if these games come out on PC, will you play them? He's like, yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. I'm like, yeah, they're PS2 games, or they're old as sin. They're gonna be cheap. And then Nocturne HD came out, and it was like $60 Canadian, and I was like, oh my god.
You know what's fucked up? I literally was talking to somebody. One of the deciding factors I found out of why Ultimax is not getting a physical release is because of how poorly Ultimax sold in the West physically. And I'm like, you
Mm.
sold it for 50? What you fucking? You put a fucking yellow ass mustard cover and told us this was $50. What did you think was gonna happen if you put that on a box?
I have no idea. And if they do this Persona 3 port and they make it expensive, I'm not supporting anything. But the PSP emulator, PSPs are one of the easiest things to emulate. There's Please let us play Persona 3. I want to buy it. I want to buy your games, Atlus.
See
I want to.
that goes into a Final Fantasy VII situation of I think people know that if they did a remake, like a full ass remake of 3, it would be a Final Fantasy VII remake level big holy shit moment. But they
Mhm.
don't want to put the development time into that. And I will at least give them kudos for this. I'm glad they are at least making the team they do have at P Studio working on a new game. But then at the same time, when you then keep doing like people will just keep kind of wondering and wondering and wondering, and it's like if you did get Persona 3 and it was just a kind of whatever port, I think it would be one of those shitty situations where I don't wish this upon them, but I think if they re-announced the port of Persona 3 coming to consoles and PC this year, you will see Persona 3 remake trending because people are like, why
Mhm.
isn't it a remake? Like, remember when Final Fantasy VII got announced for coming to PlayStation 4, and it was just Final Fantasy VII, like the PS1 version? Like, remember people were like, what the fuck?
Yeah, yeah, I do. That was huge, and it was definitely something that disappointed me personally with the Final Fantasy VII thing because I didn't play Final Fantasy VII is one of the only Final Fantasy games I haven't played.
Still?
Um, still, I've been
That's
really wrapped up in the
bonkers.
SMT.
That's absolutely
Yeah,
bonkers.
it's definitely something that's on the list, but it is low priority because I was convinced the Final Fantasy VII remake would be the best way to experience it, and turns out, well,
It
it wasn't.
it is unfortunately, yeah, Final Fantasy VII, that's its own enormous fucking topic. The problem is you are getting such a better experience if you play everything else before you play Remake.
Hmm.
Because it's a complementary game in terms of how they made that, but that is such a huge other fucking topic.
Hmm. But to go back to the Persona thing, a person in chat has talked about it before, talking about they want to play. Rain said they want to play Persona 1 and 2. We can have a conversation about what is important for the series, like it sounds kind of pretentious to say this, but like culturally or to like to for the betterment of the series as a whole. Like it obviously would be very important if they had an easy way for us to play Persona 1 and 2 duology. There would be a huge improvement to like the quality of like how to experience Atlus games if Digital Devil Saga and the Raidou games came to PC and were easily accessible. But I don't think they're thinking that way. I think they're thinking of money. And I think they think Persona 3 is going to get them money.
I will at least say this. I am at least hopeful for the sense that I know deep down that a Origins collection or whatever for like if P1 and P2 are to come anytime soon, which I don't think they're coming soon, but I know that they are being like fucked around with. It will
Mm.
be bare bones, but in the way that you wanted. Like when you see Persona 1 and 2 games again, this is what'll happen. It will be the PSP games in a trilogy called like the Origins collection. It's 1 and the 2 duology. The PSP assets with soundtrack switching. Like that's it. Like that's all they're going to do. But like that's all you need. Like that's
Yeah.
all. Like even if they cheaped out big time and were fucking losers and just took the voice lines from the PS1 version of Eternal Punishment instead of re-recording with the new cast, like even if they did that, people would still be happy. It'd be weird and lazy, but people, the bar is so low for some of these games compared to others. Whereas like P3, it is stupidly high. Just because
Mhm.
people think that they want a remake means that they'll get a remake. Whereas like Digital Devil Saga and the Persona like trilogy, like OG trilogy, like that's like give us the game. That's all we need. We need the game. We don't need anything else.
Yeah, I was talking about it before, and it just reminded me of it. Before Persona 25, I was talking with another group of people about what they were going to do, and I didn't think they were going to do this, but I thought it would be really cool if every month they released a Persona port on Steam. Um, so it would start with Persona 1 on Steam, and then it would be like a cultural, like, that would be, to me, I think that would be a super smart idea if they released
You're
the
you're
port of
you're
one.
you're speaking as if like this is a company with a Square Enix budget, which like
Yeah, that's true.
it always sucks because realistically, you would think that Sega and Atlus have a ton of money, but people don't ever talk about this. And like, I need to think of a way to make this video without making the video an honest title. Because what it would honestly be called it would be an explanation video talking about how Sega and Atlus are broke as hell in terms of dev money.
Jeez.
Dev money goes to two things, kind of three if we're counting Sonic, but let's be honest, I'm not sure where the budget's at with that game. Sega money goes here. Yakuza projects. Yakuza projects are big, but they give us money. Atlus projects. They go to SMT, sometimes, mostly going to Persona. which makes sense. That's their big money makers. Everything else, shoestring budgets. Shoestring. 13 Sentinels, tiny ass budget. Sonic's last bajillion games, shoestring budgets. Like all these games compared to everything else they produce. Like how Virtual Fighter 5 came out again this year, like last year. Like the Virtual Fighter 5 port. That had a whole I make more in a year than that game's budget, and I don't make over 50K. Like they're very lean with where their money goes because they've been burned so many times that if it's not a guaranteed success, like a new Persona, because they know even a new Persona is more of a guaranteed hit than a port.
Hmm. I guess I don't understand the logistics side of it. Obviously, I'm speaking from a point of ignorance when it comes to the financial point. But even if they did like a small thing, like just straight up release the PSP version with like an emulator on Steam, uh, let that sit for a month, make it so that culturally everybody plays through it around the same time, then release Innocent Sin, give people a month to play through that, would trend on Twitter, I think. People would talk about them, then release Eternal Punishment the month after, then Persona 3, then Persona 4, then Persona 5. Uh, that might have been a pipe dream, and it was, because it didn't happen, and it probably never will. But I think that would be really cool.
I would say it's not that it's never going to happen. It will definitely be more spaced out than you think. I think by the time this
Hmm.
year ends, you will have more games announced than you would have expected from them, but we'll be lucky to have like more than 4 games released this year.
Hmm.
And that's including Ultimax as part of those 4. Like I think one of the big pieces of verbiage that people haven't really stuck onto, especially after the Famitsu interviews, they are announcing a lot of things this year. They're not releasing a lot of things. They're announcing a lot of things this year.
Hmm. One thing I wanted to say, and I don't mean to come across as spoiled or entitled because I really don't want to seem that way, but um, I don't. I'm very. I think it's very admirable the way Nintendo does things, and this is one of the few things I will say positively about Nintendo. When they announce something, the release is quick. Like with the Smash characters, you remember when they released like Sora, and then they were like, he'll be playable tomorrow. Even like Tekken characters are released, and they go, they'll be playable tomorrow. I think if you announce too many things and you just say, "Oh, get excited! It's gonna come out in 3 months or 6 months," people have hype dies quick, and I think it would behoove them to be a little
I
slower.
hope that's what they're doing. I think they at least have been smart with like the one thing I will say is smart with Ultimax. They did very smart that they are releasing it less than 3 months before it got announced. Like I think,
Hmm.
like hopefully we'll find out next month. The next one isn't just about Ultimax, and it's like maybe it's about Ultimax, but then they announce the next thing after. I think that would be good. Of like, hey, we're gonna do a video for announcements, release a game. Video for announcements, release a game. Like do that like 4 times this year, and it'll be good.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's very important to because you could sell me on a game. If Ultimax came out like the day after they announced it, I would buy it instantly, no questions asked. But now that I kind of have time to settle and go, oh, well, it might not have rollback. I don't really like what they're doing with the
You know what's
whole
gonna go on sale? You
everything.
know that's gonna go on sale real fast.
Oh yeah, this whole thing, this whole like in 3 months, also it might actually kind of be bad. I'm like, what?
No, nothing says wait for a sale more like digital only.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, I would love to keep talking for another 2 hours. I have a 7-year-old girl's bladder today, apparently, and I'm
Mm.
actively going to die. But I do want to answer or kind of talk about 2 questions really quick. Mark Luis did ask, how much do you think it would be to implement rollback? I'm going to say we actually don't know that ARX is making that port yet. I feel like that is something you would have talked about. I think if you got ARC System Works to come back and make this port, you would have, and knowing their track record of farming out to cheap small Japanese devs, that is probably they did not. Hey guys, I know you're busy making Grand Blue, Dragon Ball, and Dungeon Fighter games, but can you make a port of one of your old games? Probably not happening. And the other
Mhm.
one was by Rain said, "What is your guess about the Pillar game that Team Maniacs is talking about?" That I would say, in terms of guesses for it, I know where like the Maniacs team is kind of at in terms of their work for it. They're just kind of at the like throwing shit at the dartboard. Like I know that they have their game that they're working on, but like right now, like I think they're still trying to get their plans for it because they realized that they announced P5 way too long, but that was because they had just got bought by Sega and they had to announce it. So I think their whole thing is now it's like, hey, when we announce our game, let's make it so that what you're gonna see is what's gonna be in the game. So like they're gonna be really teasy about it for a very very long time. So I would say it's very like ethereal right now, and kind of like don't worry about what the Royal and the Maniacs team is working on, because like it's gonna be a while for them. Like that's why we're gonna get a lot of ports announced so that it can pace out the development timeline. But Tony, thank you so much for putting up with my verbal diarrhea for like 2 hours, and thank coming on for this. Hopefully we didn't bore you too much.
No problem. I'm happy to be on. I've always wanted to be more involved in the community, and this was a great opportunity. Happy to meet you.
Yeah, it was a good time. We got a bond about deep philosophical issues and rollback netcode, the two greatest burdens in humanity in 2022, if I do say so myself.
Truly, yeah.
So, if people though enjoyed more of our babbling and stuff like that, where can they find you online?
You can find me on YouTube, obviously at Tony number 4YOU. You can follow me on Twitter. Sometimes I make the funnies at Tony4You YT. And just keep in mind, I only talk about long, boring lore. So if you want to learn more about demons, check me out.
Well, if you would also like more of this in your life, you can find us. All the show notes are going to be below, but you can check out the show on YouTube. Please consider subscribing. iTunes, Spotify, Google. It's on Facebook now. Facebook emailed me enough, and they're like, "Do you want to put your podcast on here?" And I'm like, "I don't know who's going to listen to it." Apparently, people listen to it on Facebook. If you're a Facebook podcast listener, please let yourself be known. I can't think of a platform I would listen to a podcast on less than Facebook, but speaking of Facebook, we do have a very big community there. We have a Facebook page and a very more active Facebook group with over 10,000 of you awesome people. So if you enjoy and still use Facebook, don't forget to check out the Facebook group for SMTN. If you would like to help support the podcast and keep it chugging along and hopefully get better equipment into the new year, you can go to patreon.com and become a patron there. You can donate at the dollar level and be a cool fan, get the show early most of the time, exclusive perks and giveaways, stuff like that. Be a $5 and up patron to be an executive producer and get your name read out at every episode. That will not be happening this episode because I'm literally going to die, but I will edit it into the audio version because I'm a good boy, and I'll at least do that for you. And all of you executive producers are super awesome and don't deserve me. No, wait. You're super awesome, and I don't deserve you. We all know I'm not that egotistical to have actually said that. I'm sure no one will take that clip out of context. Besides that, check out the Discord. Podcast is every week. Download Strikers. Make your grandma download Strikers. Get your friend Kevin with PlayStation Plus who only plays Warzone. Get him to download Strikers. But yeah, go subscribe to all of our stuff. Check out Tony's things. Think deep. And make sure to respectfully tweet at Atlus to release a good version of Ultimax or delay it until it's ready. Because at the end of the day, if we're giving them money, I would like to give them money for the best game possible. Well, Tony, it's time for us to leave and say goodbye to the live chat. Thank you, live chat, for being so cool and awesome for the last 2 hours. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. And, oh, shit, yeah, God, more stupid housekeeping. I'm sorry. It's normally not this scattered. If you're in Arizona, okay, Mesa, Phoenix, or going to TaioCon, or just going to be in that general area, I will be there. I think he's announced it at this point. Gnarly will also be there. Other SMTN friends will be there, but if you are in the Arizona area and would like to talk about Persona's 25th anniversary, SMT V, we're doing a post-mortem of the game there as well, or just talk about any other panels I maybe dragged myself onto. Check it out. All of those will be recorded, put up on the podcast, and other stuff like that. So, IRL stuff. If you're a brave Canadian soldier like Tony, you can go and say hi to us and not get the sickies. So, goodbye, everybody. We're gonna leave now for reals this time.
All right, goodbye, everybody, and hope you all, if you come to my channel, I hope you guys like theology. And thanks for having me on, Spencer. Have a good
No
night.
pro, no problem. Also, the real last thing we're gonna say: if you go to Tony's channel and you're not subscribed already, just comment on any or all of his videos and just say, "I'm here for the rollback netcode talk."